this, but I cried like a baby because I knew I could do better. We all can do better. So, but I contemplated retirement. I was going to retire that fight because the punches that Duran hit me with, his power.
So obviously, as a guy who is still currently fighting, and I've won world titles and I've lost world titles. You know, as of right now, I'm a 3-time MMA world champion, and that's all fine and dandy. But the only way that you become a 3-time world champion is that means you have to lose the belt numerous times, right? So I've gone through a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and in my career, it's always easy to win and it's fun to win, and that's when you get the glitz and the glam, and that's where all the positivity is. But whenever you lose those fights, you only lost a couple, I know, in your professional career, but whenever you lost those fights, what were your 1 or 2 or 3 things that you did mentally, physically, spiritually, to make sure that you didn't go down into the pit of self-doubt and continue this downward spiral after you lost a fight? How did you build yourself back up, and how did you get back into your training, your normal routine, and back into the ring and continue to win fights?
You know, Michael, my first loss was against Roberto Duran as a professional fighter. That was one of the most, if not the most difficult fight, because Roberto Duran beat me up here. He got into my head. He said things about me that made me angry and that made me not stay composed during the fight, because you got to be focused. You got to be, I call it tunnel vision. You got to be, just look at your opposition. But he made me so mad. He got into my head, under my skin, that I wanted to beat him at his own game. So in that 15 rounds of hell, throwing punches that were just dynamite at the end of it, I learned a lesson. And what happened after the fight, he took my belt, he took the title, and I'm still emotionally devastated. I go to my room and I let everybody go out. I cry like a baby. I cry like a baby. And I'm not afraid to say this or embarrassed to say this, but I cry like a baby because I knew I could do better. We all can do better. So, but I contemplated retirement. I was going to retire that fight because the punches that Duran hit me with, his power, perpetual motion, I've never hit that hard in quite a while. So I was going to quit. I was going to give it up. 2, 3 days later, 4 days later, my wife and I went on a trip to Hawaii to just kind of, calm down. I'm running on the beach. People say, "Hey, Sugar, you could have won that fight if you fought your fight, if you did your thing, if you boxed." I kept hearing these things. And I called back home. I said, Mike Trainer was my partner and my business manager and my attorney. I said, Mike, I want to fight Duran ASAP. He said, Ray, are you on vacation? I said, yeah. He said, so enjoy your vacation and come home, we talk. I said, well, now it just ended. And I went home and we jumped on having the fight, having a rematch. I was so confident in my training, in myself, because it's about, again, Michael, you know this. I mean, you get into that ring, man. If you make a mistake, you can get KO'd, right? I got into the ring. I was so confident. I was so reassured that if I did it my way, I choreographed that fight, and I won that fight. By the way.
Yes. Well, that was the infamous no mas fight, correct?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Was the eighth round? Roberto Duran, manos de piedras. Or, right? One of the baddest dudes on the planet, the only guy to dethrone you at that point, turns his back and says, "No mas, I don't want to fight this guy anymore." And I think I think it's awesome that you answered that question that way, because I was hoping, because I studied this and I studied and that was the thing, and obviously I get that all the time. Oh man, champ, if you would have just done this and done that.
Yes.
And these people who have never fought in their entire life, you get their you hear their criticism, and just knowing that if you just will do your game plan and fight within your strengths, that you can be the victor instead of. So I guess a second question, a spinoff question of that: How did you have the confidence that you weren't going to go right back into the trap of fighting outside of your game plan. Because I think that's what a lot of people do. We plan to fail because we failed to plan. And if you don't have the right game plan going into something, or if you have something taking you out of your game plan, how did you have the confidence that you knew that you weren't going to get stuck right back into the slugfest that is fighting Roberto Duran and fighting within your strengths?
Well, that's another good question, because it was all about believing in myself, because if I don't, no one else will. And composure is a key. Composure is an essential key in everything, in every aspect of life. To be prepared. And I knew what it took to win. I just had to execute that. And the first thing that took place was the fact that I didn't back down. There was no expression, no facial expression of being angry. You know, because anger is good, but anger can also, if it's too much, things are not smooth. And I used my jab, and I moved around. I used my height. I used my reach. I used my speed. And all of a sudden, people started laughing because I was doing this, and I was doing the pole punch. And he couldn't take it. He just couldn't, because it wasn't like the first fight. I wasn't a stationary target. I'm starting to sweat now talking about this fight. It's so surreal right now. It seems so like I can smell his breath right now. That's how close. We're definitely friends and respectful, like Tommy Hearns and Hagley. Well, not Hagley yet.
Yeah.
How are you, man? Hey, get the fight. Yeah, what happened?